Let me twine my arms about that body, and do contest as hotly and as nobly with thy love, as ever in ambitious strength I did contend against thy valour. Know thou first, I loved the maid I married, never man sigh truer breath, but that I see thee here, thou noble thing, more dances my rapt heart, than when I first my wedded mistress saw, bestride my threshold.
Ooh. That's gay. Sparta! Sorry, wrong movie.
Wrong movie, right actor.
Oh, shit. Almost got it. Okay. This is the Flick Lab. I'm Karri. I'm one of the host of this unfortunate product. And my co-host is Henrik. He is the brother from another mother.
the common pleb of the podcast.
Fortunately, we're here to improve the marketability, the honor of podcasts in general with our wonderful show.
Which means that we are once again touching upon some age-old film that basically everybody has already seen, talked about, and then forgotten.
Really, this was my first time seeing Coriolanus, and
I actually am not that surprised that this is your first time seeing Coriolanus.
yeah. Well, of course not, because I usually say that I have not seen some of your recommendations. But it stands that this is a film that was not seen too much as far as I can see. And it didn't do so well either, because it didn't have a lot of marketing even.
And no, the film in question was very well received. And it garnered a lot of praise. But unfortunately, it was mostly seen only in film festival circles, and it didn't get a major theatrical release. Henceforth, it kind of was doomed to be somewhat unknown and unseen picture, something that pretty much gathers Fiennes' entire directing career, which now consists of 3 films, most of them all being mostly known in the film festival circles and not so much, your average film theater going audiences.
That's right. It wouldn't be a Flick Lab episode if there wouldn't be something a little bit off about it. Not off, but something...
It wouldn't be this podcast if we would actually be talking about largely seen, popular and liked films.
Yeah, I guess so. Well,
yeah,
we did...
Yeah, like where's all the Marvel movie episodes, Karri? Why ain't we talking about the Marvel movies?
Well, that could be, because there are about 567 episodes of each of those movies.
Yup, plus the TV series. But most likely something that we will some point face is the demand/recommendations to cover Joker, seeing how we already touched Parasite.
Yeah, well, these of course have nothing to do with each other in reality, but okay, if you so wish.
They share a theme, which is something I would very well say that now that we have talked about Parasite, the next recommendation we get is to talk about Joker.
Sounds like somebody went to see Joker.
I still haven't seen the film.
Okay.
In all honesty.
Yeah, I'm game, and we are game, because I say so, to do more premiere films and new films. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's you being game. Premiere films cost arm and a leg still in Finland, even today. Oh. Ticket prices are only going up.
So it's a good thing that we have our Patreon ready and going here. But yeah, oh my dear, good lord, this is done by Ray Fiennes. Ray Fiennes, who is best known from playing Voldemort in the Harry Potter series, and of course playing the new M in Spectre, and now No Time to Die. And kind of in Skyfall as well, because he was named the new M.
Yeah. Coriolanus is Fiennes' directorial debut, which kind of makes it also an interesting film to study, because here we kind of see Fiennes taking his first steps in directing, and you can kind of start to see the ropes that Fiennes might traverse or later in his directing career.
So, dear listeners, come hitherward and join us in this great adventure with all. It's a very restrained style. No huge hero music here, and some of it may be down to the fact that the budget was low. There's also some themes that you could say was homoerotic. We will get to that in a bit. There's also the fact that this is one of the least known Shakespeare plays. And were you familiar with the play, actually, before watching this film?
I myself, I am, because I am not...
You are not human.
I am not an uncivilized brute. But no, to me, Coriolanus has always... Or always and always, but it's a play. It is one of my favorite Shakespeare's. I'm more garnered towards Coriolanus than some of the more famous and well-known works of the Bard. Like I like Coriolanus more than I like, for example, Romeo and Juliet or The Midnight Summer's Dream.
You heretic.
Yep. When it comes to me being heretic, I do feel that Romeo and Juliet is overhyped, and Midnight Summer's Dream, even though it has quite nice concept on its own right, I kind of never just got into it. I felt that the fantastical elements didn't kind of go into any direction I would have wanted them to go. It's kind of the same problem that I also have with Much Ado About Nothing. But I was thinking that if you yourself are not that familiar with Shakespeare's works, his plays, and the adaptations made from those plays, in that case, Coriolanus could be kind of an easy entry point to get yourself versed with Shakespeare adaptations, because this has them guns and all the shooty bang bang.
Yes, that's right. I definitely found it quite interesting way to put it into the 21st century, and also not, which is the style of the film, which we will get to in a bit.
Yeah. On top of that, I also was interested in covering this film, particularly from Shakespeare filmatizations, because we have now been doing this podcast over a year, and we are kind of getting closer and closer to doing 2 years, reaching the 100th. At some point, and I kind of thought that
100 episodes, mind you.
Yeah, episodes.
Not years.
Yeah, but seeing how we have been going on for such a long time, I thought that this would also kind of merit a moment where we kind of take a look back of our podcast, kind of a return back to the roots, sail on familiar waters, so to speak. And Coriolanus, in my opinion, kinda does work on that regard also, both thematically and location-wise. The film being shot in Belgrade and Serbia, which we visited in the Pretty Village, Pretty Flame, the actual Senate Hall and the streets that we see in the film are actual war zone locations. They have seen actual battle, and like the Senate Hall of the film, I've understood, is the House of National Assembly of Republic of Serbia, which is where Milosevic originally took office. And thematic wise, these kind of travels the same theme that we touched upon in the Apocalypse Now episode, which was kind of the watershed moment for us as podcast hosts in the sense that in Apocalypse we finally kind of took down the wall between us and the listeners, and we were really intimate about about ourselves, our relationship to army, and the disconnect that a person who has served may very well feel towards the society he now has to re-enter and once again be part of. And that's kind of the main theme of Coriolanus, that disconnect and that, like, the difficulty in being a person that can live with peace when his heart and mind only knows war. That's kind of the main question of the film. How do you do that?
Okay, very deep. I was thinking about why this particular filming location during the film, actually. It's Serbia. It's, of course, an area that has seen a lot of war, of course, but then again, kind of the dynamics or the story of the war is anything but what this film contains. But, yeah.
In a sense, yeah. Like in factual sense, yeah, the conflict in Coriolanus is different from the revolutionary wars or the independence wars of Serbia.
It could also be just the fact that this was a cheap and convenient place to film, a place where Fiennes has also returned to film his follow-up films.
No, I would actually say that when it comes to Coriolanus, filming in Serbia was mostly a conscious and thematic choice from Fiennes.
I can see that in many ways. For example, this city by the sea, this city which is surrounded by water, and it looks very Italian.
Yeah, and also something that the film aims to do. We are going to touch upon, talking points of the podcast already in the opening minutes of the episodes, that the film wants to be kind of a universal take on war and a person's emotional coming home from war. And I would say that that's the reason why Fiennes wanted to shoot the film on a location that has seen real war, with extras who most likely have seen real conflict, have seen real hunger and real food shortage during the Serbian civil wars. And also to tie it down to the theme of the film taking place in no place, in no particular city or town. The film does mention that it's based on the city of Rome. They are Romans, but they are Romans only in quotation marks. In the end, the film itself opens with a line, a city calling itself Rome.
Yes, a place calling itself Rome.
Yeah.
And it's not important for the film's context really where it's based, but it can be a place called Rome anywhere, and you can do the story and it will still work in contemporary environment.
Yep, and I would say that's most likely the driving theme why Belgrade in Fiennes shooting locations. He wants to kind of have imaginary place, which is not any specific place, but is kind of a universal all places. This can happen in everywhere and nowhere at the same time. And to achieve that effect, he kind of takes it into a place that you can't really pinpoint. You can't really recognize it unless you are from the said region. And because of this, not set it directly into Rome, but instead set it into a place where you can actually borrow a lot of elements and then use borrowed elements to tell a universal story.
Yes, indeed. Very happy to see that we are back in Serbia. I'm starting to like this area more and more. Something to visit, most definitely, at some point.
You are starting to like the area after seeing all the horrible war films and the general travesty that Serbia has faced.
I know, perfectly logical. But I don't know, at the same time I find something romantic and the landscapes are very varied. Yeah, they were also very helpful in Serbia. They were accommodating for the film by lending their Serbian army for the scenes, providing tools, tanks, men. It's nice to see, and hopefully this will carry Serbia to be a more visited place when making films. Would it be scene by scene?
Yep, sure. Why not?
We're sharpening a knife now. The TV carries information of what's about to come. TV which connects many of these scenes and carries vital information to keep the story going.
Yeah, in the original text, the information is usually being relayed by messengers and couriers, which of course Fiennes himself, now that he's modernizing the text, kind of leaves out and switches to modern technology like TV news broadcasts to showcase the audiences more that this is happening today, this is the 20th century, but also to once again use this very universal TV broadcasting style. Like if you contrast the TV podcasts in Coriolanus, for example, the Finnish news podcasts, broadcasts, it's two completely different words. This is more akin to BBC or CNN or other global news broadcasts whose visual language has kind of also become universal in the sense that you see the same fonts, you see the same image layout, you see similar type of studios. You never actually know what news station that is, but you have the immediate reference point to a real life news station like CNN and BBC News.
Yes, in the original play you have indeed the messengers. It often goes like this, like, did you hear? Didn't you hear? And they carry on the message maybe several days, hours after something actually happened.
Yeah, the original writing time of the play also being kind of a mystery and something that historians have never actually been able to agree when was the play really written. It's commonplace knowledge that the play is from Shakespeare's later career, often remarked to been written in either somewhere around 1608 and 1610, making it only a few years before Shakespeare himself retired from the theatre world and few years before his eventual death. And this is something that has been been deciphered from the connections that Shakespeare make in the play's context, in the play's text to real world events in Britain. Like, for example, the Thames freezing over, which you can kind of see in some lines, and also the way how the play works and operates, and the things that it highlights as in text and as themes.
Speaking of themes, this play is, of course, based on historical persons and events. Do you have anything on those?
I'm not entirely sure who is the real historical person whose story is kind of being relayed to the audiences here. Like, I would say that the play is kind of a combination of several historical elements. The main historical source that Shakespeare most likely has used when writing the play would be the works of Greek biographer and essayist Plutarch, and more notably his historical biography series known as Parallel Lives. And also, on top of that, I would say that also Titus Livius's book Ab Urbe Condita most likely has been like the historical reference point from which Shakespeare has taken his story. But on top of that, Shakespeare also adds a lot of elements and themes from British events that happened relatively close or were well known in British discourse. Like, for example, Coriolanus as a character himself draws contemporary parallels to downfalls of both Robert Devereux and Sir Walter Raleigh, both of them being feared and admired soldiers of their time, enjoying the appreciation of the Queen Elizabeth I, but like with Coriolanus, persons whose pride and easily offended nature eventually doomed both of the men and netted them the death sentences for treason.
I don't think William Shakespeare ever traveled anywhere really far. So I think he has all of his inspiration coming from literature to his own works. Maybe you know something about that.
I would also most likely guess that Shakespeare didn't travel. This is kind of a... You can kind of see this negatively in Shakespeare's works. Like, there's a lot of, for example, geographical mistakes that he makes. If you go through Shakespeare's plays and you try to draw the word map according to how Shakespeare states in his plays where the countries are in relationship to each other, you get really weird word map. Like fucking Denmark and Norway, for example, are switching places and stuff like that. So on that regard, I would say that Shakespeare most likely didn't travel. The second reason for this is that Shakespeare most likely never really was that rich in the end. Like, he made money, he was admired and well acknowledged playwright, but he wasn't a monarch. He wasn't anyone coming from the noble lineage. His father was a mayor and somewhat large, mediocre large political figure in his own town. So there was something, there was some money, there was some prestige behind Shakespeare and his name, but to be able to really travel around the world, to go to distant places and locations, I would say most likely were out of Shakespeare's reach, monetary-wise. What Shakespeare most likely was, like you remarked, was someone who was very well traversed in literature and books and histories and someone who gathered a lot of information from the sources that he was able to get his hands on, which would be something like, for example, written historical biographies, written works of history, other plays that have survived throughout the times, and other stuff like this, like going through the historical account, and that would be kind of where Shakespeare's understanding and knowledge of the world and history would stem from.
Yeah, but also William Shakespeare, even though he had a lot of appreciation, I understand he also faced quite a bit of opposition at times.
At times, yeah. Shakespeare also, in his plays, at times he was extremely critical of his of the politics of his time, and basically the societal systems that he himself faced in the 1600s.
Demonstrators are getting towards the gate, and there is supposed to be kind of a bread factory happening on the other side. I thought at first that there's something wrong with this guy, first of all, who is one of these, let's say, this opposition force, since he was speaking in such a bizarre manner, and I didn't yet know that the whole film would be spoken in this Elizabethan way. Senator Menenius is seen in between on the TV, played by Brian Cox. This is sort of a father figure for Coriolanus as role, and an appreciator of Ralph Fiennes, as many seem to be. One of these leading players, Brian Cox, Menenius. There is, of course, Gerard Butler as Tullus Aufidius. You have Vanessa Redgrave playing Volumnia. Yeah, and Ralph Fiennes as Coriolanus. So those kind of make the core of the film.
Pretty much, yeah. The film has a lot of other characters, but they are more or less side characters, especially Coriolanus' wife, who is barely seen in the film, or even in the original text.
And even then, many of these actors who even have smaller roles are extremely talented. For example, Jessica Chastain indeed as Virgilia. Everybody it's really a great decision from Ralph Fiennes' part to make it so that there's a lot of kind of supporting actors who are extremely talented, and it really gives the bones to the film.
Yeah, but you can kind of see that Fiennes has been calling some favors when making his debut here.
Could be, but even before Coriolanus, many were already aware of Ralph Fiennes' acting jobs, and we know that Redgrave was still aboard the ship of this project, even though the budget was withdrawn or cut in half. There at least happened the fact that the budget was cut in half at some point, but Vanessa Redgrave endured it all and wanted very much to be part of this. So during this demonstration, the people are shouting about bread. There is this spit of this central character of the protesters. The spitting moment was something that the actor came up at the moment. Serbian anti-terrorist unit is here playing the police. So does the Elizabethan English distract you in any way? Does it not work for you when it's set against the modern backdrop or context? Maybe the same question also story-wise. Does it affect your viewing experience in a negative way?
To kind of break it down to two questions. Does it bother me? Not anymore, because I've kind of gotten used to it, watching through the Shakespeare film adaptations. I do remember when I've kind of also faced my first film adaptation of Shakespeare's works. I was also kind of going through, what the hell is this? Why can't people talk normal? But
yeah, sorry to interrupt, but these are probably films that are also set in somewhere in the 17th century. But this is making an exception.
They are and they ain't. This ain't, like, by far, this ain't the first Shakespeare adaptation that has kind of been modernized or taken out of its original surroundings. You kind of can see pretty much everyone doing somehow Shakespeare. That there has been we bring the source material to the modern day adaptations, like for example press rumors Romeo and Juliet with Leonardo DiCaprio. There has been Indian modernizations of Shakespeare. The Akira Kurosawa kind of modernized.
Yeah, but do they use this old way of English, old speech, old English language?
Kurosawa did not. Indians, if I remember correctly, did not. But Leonardo DiCaprio sure as fuck did. That was actually my first proper Shakespeare film adaptation I ever saw. Press rumors Romeo and Juliet. And it did bother me back then, because to answer your second question, does it affect following the story? It kinda does, because Shakespeare's poetry is at times really hard to follow and understand. Like, even if you would really read the text and really take your time going it through slowly and really putting effort so that you can understand what you are reading, even then, at times, it's really hard to understand, and that can affect how well you can actually follow the story as it progresses.
Yeah, at times I felt like I was watching a French film in a theater with Polish subtitles, trying to kind of decipher what's going on. But for the most of it, of course, there are sentences that, at least for me, are completely lost. But for the most part, it's not a problem. But this is definitely a film where I recommend highly to keep the subtitles on. And I just want to bring up this whole I just want to bring up this whole point, because this is a film that has gotten a lot of problems also for native English speakers. And this is, as far as I see it from the reviews from the general population, it seems that this is the toughest thing to swallow throughout the running time. The biggest argument against the film.
I can very well see and understand why that would be the case. Especially with Coriolanus, which is not as famous and well known as a play as, for example, Romeo and Juliet, where you can kind of compensate not really being able to understand all the time what the characters are saying by virtue of knowing the play itself, having heard most of the lines portrayed in some form in somewhere else previously, and this can help you to kind of overcome the hurdle of Shakespearean language at times.
Yeah, I'm sure this would have been much more easily swallowed, much more successful in the theaters, where you actually usually even don't have subtitles for English films in English. So if you would have had it put into a modern context fully, maybe just kind of play it to the fullest and maybe go like, yo, Coriolanus, man, I'm gonna fucking kill you, motherfucker. So that would speak to the modern audiences. I think what Ralph Fiennes is doing here is that since he has had a lot of successful roles in very famous films, the guy has some cash. And then he's thinking, all right, I can put my vision finally on the celluloid and do this epic Coriolanus and not really care about even if it's going to be successful or not, because the guy can take the hit, I would assume. Because he has also stuck with this kind of low, relatively low exposure productions in his next 2 films as well.
Yeah, maybe he is calculated that he can take a hit. Then again, using the actual Shakespearean language throughout your film is kind of it's a choice that often, especially the actors coming from the stage background, which consists most of the British actors, or great many deal of them. They often do choose that when they do their Shakespearean adaptation, they do stick to the original text out of admiration. Like, the Fiennes is in the first one. When doing this done, this was also done in Richard III by Ian McKellen, who was producer in that film, but mostly did do pretty much everything else except to direct. He produced, he was writing the script, he played the main part. That's also a filmatization that uses the original text as it was written. Same goes with Horace Lumar, and like the lineage of Shakespeare adaptations that do the exact same thing that Fiennes is doing here, sticking to the original source material and not modernize it.
But I think it can be stated that one of the very appeals of this film is that it's mixing the old English language with the modern context. People throwing grenades and arming themselves with some automatic weapons and tanks and using this old language. This is something that will either put you off, you will think about it in a way that this just doesn't work. But if you think about it in another way, it's just kind of a artistic interpretation, which at least I found enjoyable and not distracting in any way, albeit comical at times. But maybe that was also, in a way, something that the director was willing to keep in.
Yup. Another thing that most likely also affected the box office revenues of the film a great deal was, like you mentioned earlier, the fact that the play is not that well known out of Shakespeare's canon. It has gathered more knowledge, or it's more known these days, thanks to largely to the fact that Tom Hiddleston, following his Marvel fame, took it on to stage to portray Coriolanus in a stage adaptation of the play. And that, I would say, gathered enough publicity so that the play is at least a bit more well known these days than it was in 2011. But that's something that came after Fiennes' film, and even with all the help that Hiddleston has been able to give to Coriolanus, the play, it still is somewhat relatively unknown, especially when you compare it to, for example, Romeo and Juliet or Macbeth or Hamlet or any other the high five Shakespearean plays.
Some things in the film have been mixed up a little bit from the original stage play. We have a scene where there's a guy from Rome that is held in a cellar by Phidias, and this ends with Phidias shooting the guy.
Yep.
It doesn't exactly go like this in the play, and this same parts of the dialogue are more or less there, but they happen after Coriolanus has been banished from Rome.
They do, yeah. And in the text, that relaying that information, like the growing discontent within Rome. It's been relayed by basically a Volscian spy and a Roman revolutionary, or someone who is a citizen of Rome but who hates Rome enough to betray his city. In here, that information is being relayed by a POW.
Yeah, I think it's a very good idea that they had this type of a scene in the beginning, so we get to know the main actors very quickly and effectively. We get to know that both Coriolanus and Phidias are not exactly in love with each other, and we have a scene of a council of war gathering with great quotes from Shakespeare. For example, quote, "He is a lion that I'm proud to hunt," end quote, and stares at his enemy on television, which now has set up the whole thing.
Yup, the opening scenes also very well kind of telegraphs to the audience what type of persons these are, and the ruthless nature of both Phidias and Coriolanus, and also the discontent and the troubles that both cities face, most notably Rome faces, as there is the citizens' revolt over the food shortage.
Yeah, there's a lot of issues at the same time. We have the food shortage, and we have now a lot of street wars scenes filmed in the town of Pančevo outside of Belgrade. Some real and some added graffiti in the scenes, some fake concrete walls, kind of a mixture of things.
We do, and the street battling and the question of food shortage that appear in the story is also something that has kind of given the historians ability to pinpoint the rough estimates or the time spread during which the play most likely was being written. Like, it's often seen that the citizens' revolt over the food shortage in the story is another nod to a historical event of Shakespeare's time, this being the peasant revolt of 1607, which was a socialist revolt opposing the rich landowners' attempted land grab by fencing off fields and pastures that had previously been in free use by every farmer and peasant. And the fencing off of those fields and pastures led into a real-life food shortage which ravaged through the less rich population, causing a lot of anger and eventual maelstrom of violence, which, like in the play or in the film where the revolt is being suffocated or being smothered through act of violence, Coriolanus uses the police force to beat off the revolters. In real life, also the authorities used force to smother off the revolt, which eventually led into the execution of the leaders of the said revolt.
Okay.
You can also kind of see this in some of the words used in the original play, like the usage of words like gentry and harvestman.
Nicely played cut there when we see the young boy with the gun in his own front yard, which interrupts the war scenes for now. And we go inside the Volumnia household, and the TV news are now once again broadcasting the information for the audience and everyone alike. Volumnia indeed played by Vanessa Redgrave,
who maybe introduces us to one of the most insidious aspects of the story, which is the way how Coriolanus' mother has knowingly and purposefully driven his son to war and to battles, so that she too can kind of enjoy the shades of glory by proxy from her son.
I didn't think about it like that. I just felt that it must be something that was quite regular phenomena during the times when this was written as a play.
Well, it's kind of a case of both in the end. Like, in the mother outright acknowledges and admits that ever since Caius Marcius was born and was a little kid, she has pushed him to become a soldier and to chase for the glory that you can attain from battle. And this is something that she kind of shows throughout the play. And there are a lot of moments where you can kind of see that the mother is pushing ideas and setting up attributes of masculinity for Caius in order to first Caius and by proxy her to attain societal admiration. Like for example, when she remarks, "Away you fool, it more becomes a man than gild his trophy. The beast of Hecuba, when she did suckle Hector, looked not lovelier than Hector's forehead when it spit forth blood, at Grecian sword contemning." But at the same time, it is some, like you remarked, it is somewhat also a societal norm or a thing that is held in high societal value and regard. Not just Romans, but also Volskis. Like the Volskis also express very heavy pro-war mentalities. Like, for example, and once again, this is in the play, the character that does not appear in the film, one of the serving men of Phidias in Phidias' household, where the first serving man remarks, "Let me have war, I say. It exceeds peace as far as day does night. It's sprightly, waking, audible, and full of went. Peace is very apoplexy, lethargy, mullet, deaf, sleepy, insensible. A getter of more bastard children than war's a destroyer of men," which translates into basically the entire household being very, "Yay, war, it's good for all." Whereas peace is something that simply makes you lazy and dull and kinda even distorts the balance of the public or the people by the laziness leading into a huge amount of sex, which leads into a huge amount of bastards.
Of course, when things are turned around and Coriolanus has joined the Volscians, at least the mother, Volumnia, is not looking forward to any kind of a confrontation, and I believe the mother is very pleased with the information that there will be no more war.
She is, but right on the next moment, she is really happy to take the credit and the valor and honor for ending the conflict, as Coriolanus signs the peace treaty.
Did she do that?
She, in my opinion, yup. She precisely does that. She gives the military salute right after the Senate officials have remarked that let's thank this person for ending the conflict.
Yeah, well, she's also a proud supporter of her country. Kind of a very, she is not shying away from popularity or fame or attention, whereas Coriolanus is the complete opposite. And the way that Volumnia has sent her children to war, at least Coriolanus, it kind of speaks to me that Volumnia is a very proud woman, a proud defender of her country.
She is also someone who strongly believes that war is, well, if not good, at least honorable, and if not directly something that is a kind of a natural element or inhabitant to man, at least something that man should more or less strive for.
On my part, I saw Volumnia's character as a very straightforward and honest person, honestly, but I see where you're coming from with your reading. I suppose,
I kind of saw her as a conniving bitch.
Well, Vanessa Redgrave is someone who is known for playing conniving bitch roles, and has been in many films that are known to most people around the planet. Deep Impact, Mission Impossible, of course, she was playing Max. In Little Odessa, she appeared also, and many more. I'm always happy to see her. Very impressed by her acting wherever she goes. And of course, Ralph Fiennes. Anything about Ralph Fiennes?
Well, what can you say, Ralph Fiennes? That is not Voldemort, and Voldemort. Fiennes is someone who really has made a name of himself in cinema circles. Like you mentioned, Voldemort, and also originally got his breakthrough in Hollywood circles by, much like in Coriolanus, by playing a blood-drinking fascist, or fascist being questionable term to use in case of Coriolanus, but did get his kind of a starting point in Hollywood in Schindler's List.
Yeah. Anything about Brian Cox?
Cox is kind of also an industry veteran. He's something one of those these days, one of those old-timey gentlemen who you kind of get into a film and you need to have someone in the role of power, but also something that can kind of show you, that can give you the menacing and a bit frail, bit old at the same time. On Cox's part, I guess the big breakthrough for him was playing the very original, first time ever on screen, Hannibal Lecter in Manhunter, which was the film adaptation of Red Dragon. This being would have been like 6 years before Anthony Hopkins donned the role and made it the household name and extremely popular. But Cox was the original Lecter. Ever since that, really kind of weird, at times quite interesting film career. There is historical figures like Killer in Rob Roy. There are the spy films like playing the controlling operators in Long Kiss Goodnight and in some of the Jason Bourne movies. And then there are the tough, bit evil military figures like being the main bad guy in X-Men 2. And then in Coriolanus, playing once again someone who is in role of power. Power is someone who is a bit behind the scenes smooth operator, as he is as a senator, but at the same time being, in the end, kind of a soft, kind of a easy to break old man.
I sprang not more in joy at first hearing he was a man-child, than now in first seeing he had proved himself a man. This quote from Volumnia also indeed is a very powerful way to describe her character right off the get-go, which she does at the sofa to the wife of Coriolanus. As they watch television, the hell of fear and destruction takes over from here. As we continue the war scenes, water from frightened man is something Coriolanus drinks, and in the play it's a man who helps Coriolanus with a shelter. The confrontation of Coriolanus versus Ovidius, there's a lot of great dialogue once again, like throughout the entire film and the play. We get more exposure to these Serbian actors like Dragan Micanovic playing Titus Lartius or Titus Lartius, which Ralph Fiennes has described as an incredible Serbian actor. Some of these Serbian actors have been dubbed in post, some of them not. I believe Dragan Micanovic got to use his own voice here, but it gets a little murkier in the old lieutenant's voice when we are next to the car where the family has been killed. I think he sounds a little bit too English, or he may be really talented with accents. Yeah, the Serbian actor who utters that Coriolanus is the devil, for clarity's sake, in this podcast. There are some small changes to the original play. Some dialogue has been sometimes reduced, but a lot of it has been reduced greatly. A lot of dialogue was filmed, but in the editing booth, Ray Fiennes approved many of these cuts to make make it flow faster, and some experienced artists told him which kind of dialogue would be essential to keep and which one he would have to let go of. For example, here we have the quote, "I'll fight with none but thee, for I do hate thee, worse than a promise breaker." So this worse than a promise breaker does not exist in the film. It sounds a bit weird in modern context, but so does a lot of the dialogue here. Coriolanus has reached some kind of a psychotic euphoria as he comes from the battle with Phidias alive. Once again, we have these war-torn areas. There's an abandoned hotel from the Yugoslavian days. Oh, and in the fight between these characters of Coriolanus and Phidias, the swords are replaced by knives. He wanted still to keep the close combat, not just, shoot somebody in the head or anything. Ray Fiennes said that, quote, "a tight filming," or it's not actually a direct quote, I believe. Ray Fiennes said that a tight filming schedule sometimes gives the film a messy, gritty intensity. And I think that's exactly what happened here. Here it works great. They fall through the window during the fighting, there's the concussion, and then story goes on. This might be a little weak cut. There's the concussion, and it's immediately followed by when we see Phidias, who has already gotten up and has gone to the car where the family has been murdered. It felt a little bit like there could have been something there in between.
Altogether, the film does, on an occasion, it does really have some weaker cuts. And cuts where you kind of really see that cut has been forced, especially when there are the switches from the urban combat scenes to the newscasting scenes. Or
I have to give it to you, though, that there is this perverse delight of Volumnia about the war wounds, which at the time seemed to be a sign of honor, a sign of value, that you have had a certain amount of battle scars. Funny that you can actually count them so accurately as separate wounds or scars, but yeah, this is the discussion point.
Yeah, but they also work as a sign of honor and sign of valor to others, also like the general public in Rome. Later, when Coriolanus tries to become the senator, one of the big talking points is how can and why is Coriolanus so opposed to the idea that he would show his scars to the public.
Yeah, it seems to be like the crushing point for his character, where some desperate measures have to be taken because battle scars were not shown. Military parade, kind of a homecoming ceremony, is where the situation starts to fall apart. He has a great greeting, 100,000 welcomes, and where Coriolanus becomes to be known actually as General Coriolanus.
Yeah, or he gets the surname of Coriolanus. The character up until this point has just been Caius Marcius. He gets the new name or new surname Coriolanus as a kind of a reward for his actions in the city of Coriolini, which was the Volscian town where Coriolanus went and, well, once again kicked off Phidias' ass, but also, drove back the Volscis.
Jon Snow plays the news anchor. Well, he doesn't need to play it because he's a very well-known news anchor in the England.
I really didn't actually catch that one.
It's something that probably nobody will catch unless you're living in the country.
Most likely, yeah. Sounds very much like a British celebrity.
This happens during Menenius making fun of these two politicians, ending with the quote, "More of your conversation would infect my brain."
Okay.
But he appears a couple of times. Woman protester is blaming Coriolanus of arrogance. Yeah, there's the black woman and the white guy who are talking about Coriolanus, and was it the black woman who is blaming Coriolanus of the arrogance? I'm saying black woman because I need to make the differentiation to the next TV show where Coriolanus himself appears.
Yeah, that she is. Granted, many of the characters throughout the story actually blame Coriolanus precisely for being arrogant. That's kind of the main sticking point that everybody has against Coriolanus, or at least the main sticking point that they are willing to use against Coriolanus.
But the relationship between Coriolanus and his mother seems to be a very close one, as she is tending the wounds that he has gotten.
Yeah, she also is the only female figure in the story who Coriolanus actually agrees to listen to and take advice from. Coriolanus, and this is some Oedipus type of shit here, is even more affectionate with his mom than he is with his wife.
On the commentary track, Fiennes commented on this. I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was meant to be, of course, like a kind of an intimate moment between the mother and the son. But it wasn't like there was anything else going on beyond that. But when the wife opens the door and sees her healing the wounds, she kind of feels that she broke some kind of a moment, and she seems to be a little bit jealous of the relationship, the close relationship that they share. Feels maybe a little bit uncomfortable about it, even though she shouldn't.
Well, maybe she kind of should. I mean, that might be what Fiennes is saying on the commentary track. I'm going off with the Finnish DVD that does not have director's
This was
commentary.
roughly what he said on the commentary track, yeah.
Yeah, that might very well be. But that's not actually what gets translated in the imagery of the film. This is the first time that this happens in the movie, but this isn't the last time it happens, because the same goddamn dynamic, very much in the exact same thematic core, also happens later in the film when Volumnia is kind of teaching Coriolanus how to approach the people, and when she's giving him the whole lecture, no, you have to go out there and you have to apologize, and you have to you have to talk nice to the people just for 15 fucking minutes so that they give you the vote.
Yeah, and there is this kind of affectionate look, and there's also some affectionate touch, you could argue, at the end when they try to convince Coriolanus not to carry on with the attack.
Yeah, and the same way also the wife again is being left on the other side of the door, where she once again looks upon Volumnia and Coriolanus in bit jealously. You can actually see some hurt on her face once again.
Yeah, that is an interesting point. But I can't read anything else into it that they have a very close relationship, and she's just kind of being this type of mother, just who gives kind of this affectionate looks every now and then and likes to touch her children. That sounds so wrong.
Could be. Like you said it out that there is a director's commentary track from Fiennes. I'm willing to take the dude on his word, even though I haven't listened through the track, or I don't have the access to Fiennes' commentary track. But if he says so, then fine. I'm willing to believe him. I'm willing to believe his words. But once again, without the commentary track, like just going by visuals alone, blind, I got really strong, kind of a bit perverted mom, son, Oedipus vibes. Not necessary to the penis goes where lengths of it, but to me the relationship did look a bit off, especially and mostly thanks to the fact that the wife is also living under the same roof, being part of the household, and it's just constantly only Coriolanus and his mom.
Yeah, maybe so, in the Oedipus direction. Or just what I get is that she is exceedingly proud of her son, which is also seen when when the mother is gathered watching the television and sees on the news the ceremony in the parliament building that her son is now getting all this fame, and she is the only one who is smiling widely, while the others look a bit concerned and uncomfortable, like the wife.
Yeah, good call. Good call.
Also, there's a glimpse at the marital bedroom. The director wanted to hold the moment a little bit longer, but cutting happened in this instance as well. And this is an interesting scene actually, because the only recognition, as Ray Fiennes said, that is given to the wife here is just turning the head slightly to the right on the bed, and that's it.
And that's it. And that plays like the dynamic between Coriolanus and his wife plays a huge goddamn part in the film once it kind of reaches all that homoerotic moments.
Honestly, I didn't see that homoerotic. When I was listening to the commentary track, and he made the notion that this has some pretty clear, or whatever was the way that he said, but he mentioned that some homoerotic stuff could be seen here, and I was like, what? Seriously?
God, what? I mean, come on, man! It's already in the goddamn text of the play. It's not just, the long gazes at each other's eyes.
Do you have some quote to drop from there? Because I know that there is something that you can read in such a way, and then again you can have an alternative reading to some.
On that remark, is there actual homoerotic relationships going on in the story? My take is no. What Shakespeare is talking is about the connection that two men can have, and especially a kind of an emotional, kind of understanding that two men that breathe and talk violence can have towards each other, while the society surrounding them is unable to understand them and is unable to understand what type of people they are. Ooh. Like Shakespeare talks about special bond and kinship, that those who live the life of war or the same disconnect to the surrounding world of peace can share. And by that remark, the characters themselves are straight, but the language used is pretty damn strong. Like there's the remark that Coriolanus makes when he is in Coriolanus and he's meeting his comrade in arms, his old-time war veteran friend, and Coriolanus quotes, "Oh, let me clip ye, in arms as sound as when I wooed in heart, as merry as when our nuptial day was done, and tapers burned to bedward." He's using the language he's using is, he's describing the joy and happiness that he felt when he first took his wife to marital bed. And this is what he uses when he describes the happiness he feels when he faces his old war buddy. Or when Caius and Aufidius meet after Caius has been driven from Rome. This is the moment when Caius comes to Aufidius's home, and Aufidius goes, "O Marcius, Marcius, each word thou hast spoke hath weeded from my heart a root of ancient envy. If Jupiter should from yond cloud speak divine things and say, 'Tis true,' I'd not believe them more than thee, all noble Marcius. Let me twine my arms about that body, where against my graned ash 100 times hath broke and scarred the moon with splinters. Here I clip the anvil of my sword, and do contest as hotly and as nobly with thy love, as ever in ambitious strength I did contend against thy valour. Know thou first, I loved the maid I married, never man sighed truer breath, but that I see thee here, thou noble thing, more dances my rapt heart than when I first my wedded mistress saw bestride my threshold.
Yeah, sure, you can read it as in a gay context. You can also read it that these are two people whose meaning of life is on the battlefield and leading their men. And, of course, that Coriolanus has given himself up. It seems that because of his respect towards Coriolanus, he is extremely happy to see him switch sides. And the respect level as a military man, as someone who has come to his side, seems to be quite huge indeed.
And that's precisely also my take. Like that's what, if you ask me, that's what Shakespeare is talking about.
Yeah.
That bond. But Shakespeare uses a language. Fiennes uses language and visuals to kind of play with this more affectionate, even bit gay rhetoric or gay themed scenes here to highlight and emphasize that bond. I'm really hesitant to say that the characters are gay.
Yeah.
The scenes are a bit gay. Like in both of these
True.
cases, they are using their wives as metaphors. But the wives themselves are kind of surprisingly absent from the play. And the wives are never actually spoken in this fashion. None of these men ever give this affection towards their wives. Instead, this is the kind of affection that is spared towards other career soldiers, to those whom Caius live in and meet in the world of battlefields, and who, like Caius, speak war as their native tongue. And there's... to me, this is kind of stemming from the concept that there's a level between men that only other men can kind of understand, and more notably, this is stemming from a level that basically other men of violence can only understand. And this is and as a theme, this is kind of something that also, for example, or as an idea, this is something that was, for example, also shared by the ancient Greeks, who encouraged sexual and emotional relationships between men for precisely this same reason. That there's a kind of an emotional connect that you can't get from a woman. That there's a certain type of sensual fulfillment that only another man can give to you. And Coriolanus, as a story, stretches this concept to also talk about the people who are engulfed by war.
What's with this podcast and homosexual overtones or undertones?
I don't know, I'm blaming you, man.
Well, technically I didn't choose this film this time.
No, but I'm still blaming you. I'm scapegoating here the best I can.
Are you sure you don't have anything to confess tonight? Yeah.
No, but we kind of are doomed to run into, I guess, homosexual overtones every now and then, thanks to the topics that we discuss.
Not only, and of course you're gonna have it every now and then without any intention.
Yeah, like Coriolanus itself, it deals, as a story, it deals with extremely heavy subject. And it is a subject that kind of maybe is best put into words through, well, this kind of a language. Yeah. But as a theme, this isn't kind of... Coriolanus isn't the only place where this theme, where the notion of the separation of military life to civilian life is played out. Like there's, for example, to give you another film, the movie Hurt Locker deals with the exact same disconnect. The Jeremy Renner's character there is someone who is so used to war and battlefields that he no longer can operate and function in a society, in a peaceful society. Like, he no longer can live with peace. That's impossible for him. Which, in the end of the film, comes to fruition when Jeremy at first gets home from Iraq. And then there's a really telling scene when he's standing in a grocery store. And there's a whole aisle of different cereals. Like tens of different brands and boxes of cereals. And Renner just froze over there on the grocery store and just stares at the collection of cereal boxes. And all of a sudden realizes that he no longer can live in the world of peace. Like, he's too engulfed by the war to ever fully return back to the normal world, to the normal civilization. And where that leads him is re-enlisting to Iraq, to once again to return back to war. As a concept, that's precisely the same that what Coriolanus is talking about throughout its running time. The way how Coriolanus approaches the topic is by highlighting the bond between the men of violence in both in the spoken text and in the visual language.
I like it that they went to an actual marketplace in the film as they do in the play. Well, nowadays, going to the marketplace is not really a place where people would gather often for much of anything else than except maybe the sale of organic potatoes or something. But I like it that they kind of, it's kind of funny to see that the people are there in the modern day. This is when Coriolanus is trying to get his votes, and he's there kind of reluctantly because he's not good at selling himself and also isn't in the best terms with the people.
He also kind of hates democracy, or at least the concept of giving people the voice.
That's true. One markable piece of dialogue is from Coriolanus. Indeed, I would be consul. And he says it with kind of uncertainty. It doesn't convince all in the crowd, and he's struggling to play his role. And has not shown the scars yet, of course, which is a tradition to show for your efforts in the war for the people. Interesting moment where they are inside the Senate and some of the politicians have turned against him and are willing to openly show it outside of the building. We also see some real footage outside from TV, which was a real demonstration against Slobodan Milosevic, which fits perfectly in the moment. If you know something about the conflict, then you'll probably notice some flags or signs in this footage, which will make you see where this is coming from.
I have to confess that I completely missed the flags and signs.
Yeah, nevertheless, the tension against Coriolanus mounts. Now there's the mother trying to persuade her son to fix the things that have gone wrong with the people. You also see this one cafeteria that they filmed in the new Belgrade. One key quote goes like this: "You are too absolute." And as pointed out in many discussions, this is something that kind of puts it into a one sentence what his character is about. Kind of a child in a soldier's suit. But he has some good points in his own way. He won't act like a prostitute, or as he says, as like a harlot, against the real him.
Yeah, that can kind of be one take on, and you can kind of defend Coriolanus on that remark. Like, a lot of the politics you kind of see in the play or in the story are very much politics, and like a lot of the politics you see in the film or in the story are just, people following traditions and customs, which doesn't really have that much weight into them, or doesn't really share any specific meaning. Like, for example, the huge point is being made about Caius not being willing to show his scars, but when you question it, like, what does the scars and seeing someone's scars, what does that have to do with actually leading a country, doing politics? Really doesn't measure anything. It's the whole fuss is about Coriolanus not following tradition and not holding to custom, and that whole plot point kind of most likely I would guess it comes from Plutarch's historical accounts, because Plutarch has remarked that in his time the people were given a voice, kind of in quotation marks, when it came to elections. But this voice often meant just, shouting, like yay, nay, or just shouting in general, which in many ways is not actually testing any political candidate's promises or political views. It's just a system in place that merely tests how like the candidate is or was socially wise. And this is kind of the political system that is behind also how the people have a voice in Coriolanus. The common folk, when conducting politics, all they are doing is essentially they are shouting, much like in Plutarch's historical accounts. And this kind of helps you understand Coriolanus's view that asking the people for their voice is merely a formality, and he maybe should not be troubled to follow this kind of a custom, because no one in the common folk has an individual vote or individual voice. There's just this shouting match, so why see the trouble?
You can feel sympathy towards Coriolanus in points like in the TV studio, which is this kind of a be honest about who you are type of a TV show where you're supposed to show the real you. He tries, but this is the kind of a personality that is not easy to see amongst the common people as someone who is a suitable leader. They are constantly also misreading him, which turns into this conflict.
Kinda, yeah. But there's also a great deal of fault lies with Coriolanus himself, who is also unable to understand himself. Like, Coriolanus does know that something is wrong with him. He does acknowledge that for some reason he can't participate in society the same way that everybody else does. He understands that there is some reason why he feels so alienated from everybody else and the world around him, the world of peace. But he can't understand why that is. And also because Coriolanus is a man of action, he's not an articulator or poet or politician. He can't really express and explain how he is and why he is. That's why it's so important that his friends try to put Coriolanus's nature into words. Like in that TV studio when Sicinius remarks that, consider this, he has been bred in the wars. Since he would draw a sword and is ill-schooled in poetic language, meal and brand together he throws without distinction. But once again, that's Sicinius trying to explain Coriolanus, because Coriolanus himself can't talk about his problems. And that's kind of in the core of the disconnect. Once again, that's kind of what showcases in the common cry of curse speech that Coriolanus gives. He feels and knows that something is wrong. He doesn't just know what that is. He just knows, like he says, there's a word elsewhere.
It's a very strong quote here from Shakespeare, from Coriolanus. And I really love it how it goes on its head a bit and shakes the audience when he turns the finger from him towards the audience, showing that he won't be stopped. He will do exactly as he sees fit, and the common people are not going to affect him in any way.
Yeah. Then again, it may have been better if he would have allowed the common people to affect him, not just career-wise. Like,
yeah, sure.
Had the people been able to affect Coriolanus could have become a senator. But also, when it comes to the meaning of politics, or the way how politics are being executed, like many historians, like for example, Machiavelli has remarked that it was this kind of a competitive nature and conflicting discourse within Rome itself that ended up being kind of a good for Rome and the Roman politics. And the remark was that if there would have been consensus in political matters within Rome, it would have only led into a supreme power of the elites and the Roman partisans. So on that regard, even though people not here being unwilling to take Coriolanus, and they challenging and pushing against Coriolanus very strongly, that of course is a tragic event for Coriolanus himself that destroys his political ambitions in the story. But at the same time, it's the same conflicting and competitive political discourse that happened within Rome itself, and which has been argued that actually was good for Romans and Roman and the political system within Rome.
Mm.
Something to kind of, I guess, to note about Coriolanus is that Coriolanus is perhaps the most political play that Shakespeare ever wrote. And at the same time, it's perhaps the most optimistic play that Shakespeare ever wrote about people like common folk taking part in political discourse and political debate. Like while it's true that in Coriolanus the people are constantly being dubbed and manipulated mostly by the two conniving tribunes, the tribunes of the plebs. And on that regard, Coriolanus is extremely cynical play about politics and political ambitions. But at the same time, Coriolanus is one of the rare few plays where the common people still actually hold some political power and hold some say on the matters. In typical Shakespearean play, where politics are being discussed, like for example in Henry III and Macbeth and all these bigger Shakespearean plays, the politics are just something that are done by the great men of the story, the kings and jarls and the senators in their senates, and the common people just have to kind of walk by and just follow the winning political stance, so to say, and they have no say in the matter. And that's kind of one of the big things where how and where Coriolanus as a play and as a story differentiates from the rest of Shakespeare's political works.
I, on the other hand, felt that this was an extremely negative description of democracy, even though we see that what kind of a man Coriolanus is and who should most likely be ousted. Just this that the mass crowds have a wrong image of the guy. They don't have the full image of what he is about, and just shouting these very anti-intellectual lines and this way affecting the full understanding of this person further. I saw it as kind of like a lynch mob out to get someone who is not actually as bad as they might think. Also given the fact that during those times there were a lot of brutal leaders and it was normal.
And you are kind of right there. Like the political system shown to you in Coriolanus, it's very cynical, it's very dark. It's the people who are being led, essentially by, once again, those in power. mostly the two tribune of the plebs. And there is a lynch mob quality to the people. And you can even argue that, yeah, they don't get the whole picture of what kind of man Caius Marcius is. And they do partly kind of wrongly convict him in the story. At the same time, Caius Marcius maybe is a person who never should actually be given political power because Caius Marcius, while, yeah, he is on the inside suffering war veteran who suffers from PTSD, who, like said, can no longer talk peace. But at the same time, he is also a bit of a tyrant. Like, not throughout his actions, but would you give him political power, he might very well rise up to be a tyrant within Rome. So in that case, kind of ousting him already at this point might be a good thing for the people.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's showing the simplicity of the people here.
I don't know. I kind of see I on my end. Even though the people might be a bit simplistic, I also see them rather complex in the story. Caius, like when it comes to actually being a political figure, when it comes to being a leader within a peaceful society, you kind of are required to understand rhetorics and use rhetorics to your advantage. Like that's in a civil discourse, that's kind of what you have to do, and you have to be able to put yourself on the other person's shoes. And that is precisely what Caius Marcius can't do. Like Caius Marcius sees the rhetorics and doing a peaceful politics. He sees that as simply, pretty words and scheming and manipulation and nothing else. And he is completely unwilling to take part on that. He's unwilling to be a rhetorical person. And that's, I would say, that is the kind of the key element, the key component that Caius Marcius lacks. And because of that, and if we take it like you have to be a rhetorical person, you have to be able to take part in rhetorics in order to allow or be able to make civilization and communal living possible. In that case, Caius Marcius would be like the worst possible person ever to be put on a place of power. Like you should never actually let the man become a senator because he's unable to work in the way how you would have to work when you are being a leader in a peaceful and civilized society and not on a battlefield.
Whichever the outcome, the people are not really recognizing his war efforts, and somehow seeing the scars or wounds is such a big deal that they are not willing to believe it until they see it on his skin. Maybe that's the times.
It's more than believing that he has scars. It's more about Caius Marcius actually willing to play the ball and actually do what they ask from him.
Most definitely a guy who is not a politician and played his cards dead wrong.
Also a guy who may have actually become a tyrant had he been given the power or the opportunity.
But now the tyrant is seen in a kind of a comical modern setup that they have built, where Coriolanus is seen hitchhiking and resting in the swamp, growing a long beard, not having any possessions or money except maybe his bag and clothes or garments. Some of it is shot in Montenegro when he arrives to the city of the Volscians in Antium, shot in the Bay of Kotor in Montenegro, in this wide shot of the city from above. More places to visit here. Montenegro definitely on my list now. But that was kind of a given. It's one of the prettiest parts of Europe right there. And we are introduced, we see more of the personality of Phidias as he walks on the streets and greets the people and is definitely this, not even necessarily really any kind of a politician, but he's the kind of a man who feels for his people and defending these people as well, but also can be seen as like the good neighbor or something like that. A proper leader, if you will. They had a sequence here where the guard in the cellars would have been distracted by a lady asking for cigarettes, and this way Coriolanus would have gotten inside the cellar bunker where Aufidius is. And once again, in the play, it goes a little bit differently. He starts...
It does. They ain't
there's
even
some kind
in
of
bunker.
Right, it's some kind of a long-winded discussion that he has with the Volscians, and then suddenly he starts to be in contact with Aufidius.
Yeah, so in the original play, Coriolanus simply pushes himself into Aufidius' household. It's being some kind of a lavish house, mansion type of thing, instead of the concrete cellar bunker that Gerard Butler has chosen for himself. But Coriolanus simply, washes into Aufidius' home while Aufidius is having this party for his generals and the Volsci senators. And the servants of Aufidius' household kind of come there and stop Coriolanus, start asking Coriolanus, who are you, what are you doing here? And Coriolanus is just, trolling the guys, giving non-answers. And they repeatedly ask him to leave. Coriolanus refuses, and at some point one of the servants go and fetch Aufidius, who now comes into the scene and starts also asking that who the hell are you and what are you doing in my home. And at that point, finally, Coriolanus actually shows his face and lets everybody know who he really is.
And Aufidius and Coriolanus get into a kind of like Fiennes said, to a kissing distance. But when I was looking at this film, I got the reference to the earlier quote, beard to beard, now they are beard to beard. But something terrible does not happen, just a little show off with the knife, but it ends up being like a passionate hug.
Yeah.
Fiennes said that he didn't outright mean this to be anything homosexual, but maybe it's something that you can read in different ways, or it going a little bit to the, to the border, where you could say that this could be a little bit more something else, but not quite.
And like I said, that's quite sticking with also how Shakespeare intended these moments.
This is followed by another kind of intimate moment where the hair of Coriolanus is being cut. There's the one who is cutting the hair is replaced by Aufidius, who cuts then Coriolanus' hair. And there's a short scene where we see the lonely and sad Menenius, because Marcius has joined Aufidius. But there's an interesting quote from Aufidius, where he says in the Volscian camp that, "When, Caius, Rome is thine, thou art poorest of all, then shortly art thou mine." So this is kind of could be seen as like one fire drives out the other fire. Something is always replaced by something else. But then if he's saying that, he's kind of... I think he's saying that he is going to take the power from Coriolanus when Rome has been taken control of. Or he could even say something more, like, we're going to kill Coriolanus when all of this is over.
Yeah, the last one was also my reading when it comes to Aufidius in the story, and more specifically in Fiennes' movie.
Or if you want to read it even into more odd directions, you could also put that "then shortly art thou mine" into homosexual context.
Yeah, I wouldn't stretch it that far. But to me, in the film, Aufidius always comes off as a conniving and scheming little shit, who even after he makes a pact with Coriolanus is constantly just, buying his time, thinking, when will I stab Coriolanus in the back?
Yeah, that's what I get from this, yeah. Panel has gathered. Menenius decides Coriolanus might hear him, so he goes to try his luck. And Menenius and Coriolanus meet, wife, mother, child, I know not. My affairs are servanted to others. Wow, how do you read that one? So is this the moment where Coriolanus disowns his entire family and puts them on the firing range? Or is this to say that they are secondary to my interests, but I still have some affection towards them?
My take is kind of a mixture of both. In practice, what Coriolanus is doing, he is actually putting them in the firing range. They are going to be in the Rome that Coriolanus and Aufidius are going to conquest and then burn to the ground, which...
Well, most definitely, it doesn't sound like he's going to make any amends or any kind of a protection for his family during this time.
Most likely, yeah, no. I don't think that Coriolanus fully understands what he's saying, or he doesn't fully understand what this line of policy would actually mean for his family and loved ones. I don't think that Coriolanus intentionally is now going full, I don't care about my mother, and let the bitch burn attitude or direction.
Then again, throughout the film and the play, Coriolanus has kind of made the case that he's a bit of a kid in this suit of a soldier. And he might be just shooting this. Well, like you said, it could be that he doesn't really know what he's saying. He's saying it, but he doesn't really mean what he's saying.
Yeah, he means part of it. Like, he still means to take over Rome and, if need be, burn it to the ground. But he hasn't thought it through in the sense that what that would mean for his wife, kid, and mother. But that, once again, is kind of a Coriolanus being a man of war. And someone who can only speak war and understand war. Coriolanus only, at this point, he only sees Rome as another battlefield. And since you can't really distinguish between friend and foe, loved one and enemy on a battlefield, Coriolanus accidentally ends up also condemning his loved ones.
Definitely hasn't thought out this very much through, because in the next scene already, he is ready to back off when discussing things further with his family.
Yeah, and that's kind of a remarkable moment on the storylines. It's kind of a high point of Coriolanus as a character.
Yeah, this is an old sugar factory in Belgrade. Quote, "Oh, a kiss, as long as my exile, sweet as my revenge." Wow, is this just, again, Coriolanus being extremely childish? As in, if put into modern words, oh, a kiss. That was long as fuck, I don't want to do this anymore.
I read it kind of a Coriolanus finally actually understanding what he is gambling and about to lose here. Like, the main thrust of the scene, Coriolanus meeting with his family, at least to me, is that throughout the story, Coriolanus has previously been reasoned with logic and force. Senators and his mom uses logic, and Aufidius uses force to oppose Coriolanus. But now here, he's actually being reasoned with compassion. And that kind of puts Coriolanus off his element. He's forced to notice and recognize the fact that if he attacks Rome, Rome will still have his loved ones in it. His wife and family will live in Rome. He's attacking their home. He's attacking his own home. He's attacking against his loved ones. He might end up hurting his loved ones when he breaches the gates of Rome. So that kind of forces Coriolanus to actually recognize that he has affection and feelings towards his loved ones. He doesn't really want to hurt his mom, wife, and child.
That's not exactly how this quote really came to me. A kiss as long as my exile. So what I read here is basically saying that I don't want to do this. This kiss was horrible. Please don't kiss me again, because I don't feel anything towards you anymore, even though he might not really mean it.
Okay, because I on the other hand, I read that quote as a sign of longing. Like, very much Coriolanus longs back to Rome. That's why he's attacking back there head first to break through the gates of the city that once exiled him. Sure, it's also an act of revenge, and Coriolanus wanting to avenge his exile. But he's also, at the same time, he's heading back home. That's the direction where Coriolanus has basically went after every single military campaign that he has waged before. So, to me, as long as my exile, it's Coriolanus admitting that he kind of wants to get back to Rome. He kind of longs back there, and he kind of also longs this affection from his wife. Coriolanus also remarks that he hasn't had any other, he hasn't had lovers or prostitutes or anything of the kind while he has been away from Rome.
I've noticed that this Old English language leaves a lot of verbs unspoken, so this could also be like as long as my exile, longing for something, who knows. But I took it as this kiss is as painful as my exile.
It can be also that. And it can also be as painful as my exile in the sense that Coriolanus really feels hurt by his exile. And the same way he kind of feels hurt by the fact that he's now feeling the hurt because he actually finally once again gets kissed by someone.
Without having seen heard or read the play before watching this film, I felt that Coriolanus might get his family even killed at this moment with quotes such as, "Oh mother, what have you done?" And it could have been the firing squad for the family after that one, to follow his ideals instead of caring about his family. But that doesn't happen.
No, another really big red flag for the family here is kind of the fact that, well, Coriolanus and now the family is also being completely surrounded by Volskis. So that the family is gambling quite a lot when they are asking Coriolanus to actually stop the war campaign and come home, while Aufidius is actually standing right there next to them.
Yeah, and Aufidius is following indeed everything and says that I was moved withal. So more or less saying, I believe, something like, and I was also moved very much, which is followed after what Coriolanus asked, like, wasn't that the shit, man? But Aufidius agrees for peace here. Later, it just comes a little bit out of nowhere, kind of stabs Coriolanus for that peace that they already agreed to. What the hell?
Well, there are a couple of things that kind of can play into this one. The first one, of course, is that Aufidius always was planning to at some point betray Coriolanus. So this is nothing else than him just seeing his schemes to the end. Another can be that Aufidius also, or the Volskis never were entirely ready to take over the Rome. Like they wanted to threaten Rome and show their power, but they never actually wanted to break through the gates. Because then they would actually have to also deal with the Roman politics and maybe somehow solve the whole food crisis and stuff like that. Take some responsibility for the now conquered Rome. So on that vein, it might actually best suit for Aufidius to get almost through the gates, and then at the final moment to write a peace treaty that is pretty good also for the Volskis. Like now they can actually set up the terms for that peace. Rome has to give something to the Volskis, or the Volskis are going to break through the gates. So the peace might actually be kind of a win-win situation for Aufidius.
Yeah, but it's also something that makes Aufidius look like a horrible asshole. If anyone got the wind of the fact that Aufidius is not, after all, game with the peace treaty that was just signed, and he would be willing to attack Rome at any minute now.
Kinda, yeah, but then again, that's a game that Aufidius was already willing to play.
I mean, if this is his end goal, then okay. And then getting rid of his old villain at the end, okay. But the way that he is starting to talk to the soldiers, quote, "He sold the blood and labor of our great action, therefore shall he die." Well, as you have hinted, it could also be read that he's just trying to manipulate the opinion of his comrades.
He most definitely is also manipulating the opinion of his comrades. In the play, it's the Volsky senators or something of a kind to whom Aufidius makes his case that Coriolanus now must die, and who vote for Coriolanus' death at the end of the play. So there is most definitely in the story, there is the aspect of Aufidius has to make others come to his point here. Make others also agree that Coriolanus has to die. Something that might also play into why Aufidius kind of makes 180 here is that he might also feel betrayed by Coriolanus, emotionally wise. Up until this point, Coriolanus and Aufidius have both been men who are career soldiers, who speak war. But what happens to Coriolanus when he meets his family and signs the peace treaty is that he, in a way, Coriolanus, in the end of the story, he finds a way how to also live with peace and how to let go of the constant battle. That's something that Aufidius himself kinda can't do. Aufidius is still locked into this battlefield mentality, and now he sees how Coriolanus, his next of kin in combat, has let go of war and has learned how to live in peace. And he might actually feel emotional hurt because of that.
You're right, it's a full character arc for the character of Coriolanus, and makes Aufidius look like in the end as the definite villain. The blade that started the film also ends the movie.
Yeah,
as it's used to kill Coriolanus.
I'm not entirely sure do I see Aufidius necessary as a villain. Like, once again, this becomes a question of the connection between men, and more than that, connection between men who live or have lived military life. And what Aufidius kind of loses here is that chance for that kind of a connection. And I kind of can take Aufidius' side.
Yeah, looks like Coriolanus learned something good about life, whereas Aufidius just continues his typical ways and maybe appears more as the Coriolanus at the start of the film.
Maybe, kinda.
Like, this more of a boy.
But Coriolanus altogether is an interesting beast in the sense that it's a play that works kind of as an example of a piece of art that can be viewed and consumed by both sides of the political argument, those on the right and those on the left. Because Coriolanus has been championed by real-life fascists. Like, this was taught widely in schools in Nazi Germany. And the reading that Nazis had of Coriolanus was that Coriolanus was this pinnacle of an Aryan beliefs. He was this great, strong hero, a noble, heroic warrior who is being betrayed by the weak and the unruly and undeserving masses. They contrasted Coriolanus against Hitler, for crying out loud. But at the same time, as Nazis endorsed the play, as fascists have endorsed the play, also liberals have taken the play into their hearts. Liberals, on the other hand, often side with the common people in the play, calling question the Caius's more elitist and totalitarian features and beliefs, seeing Coriolanus more as a cautionary tale about the follies of class divide and believers like Caius is, that political power should only be viewed by set group of people and the deserving noble ones, and who should be allowed to govern over the common riffraff. And in the liberal take, this is precisely a cautionary tale of that, how you should kind of recognize those people and react to those people, or at least try not to give those people all the power in the world, and why it's important also for those people who believe in this elitist worldview to, in the end, see the point of the people and kind of understand the value of democracy.
There's so many readings to this story that I think we should just simply invite the Shakespeare fella into this podcast to set the record straight once and for all. What were you trying to say with this play?
Well, yeah, maybe. Then again, we are talking about piece of art, but especially in the text. This being a play that uses poetic language of all the goddamn things. So I'm not entirely sure if even the Shakespearean fellow can actually answer what the play is fully about, and it just doesn't come in the fact of 6 million different readings.
The Fiennes fellow, though, was able to describe the ending scene of the film as, quote, more or less kind of like hunters in ancient tribes respect the animal they've killed, because Ovidius hugs Coriolanus before he lets him go to the ground on laying position when he has stabbed Coriolanus.
Yeah,
so he likened that to that.
Yeah, and in the original text, the play ends up with the Wolskis carrying away Caius's corpse in this kind of honorary fashion. Ovidius taking one, like they put the spears on the ground and they raise Caius's corpse with the spears, and the same way as one carries a body in a coffin to the final resting place. And Ovidius is one of those carriers in that moment. So there is that moment of respect right after they kill him.
The play also ends with these respectful words. My rage is gone, and I am struck with sorrow. Take him up. Help, 3 the chiefest soldiers, I'll be one. Beat thou the drum that it speak mournfully. Trail your steel pikes. Though in this city he hath widowed and unchilded many a one, which to this hour bewail the injury, yet he shall have a noble memory. Assist, said by Ovidius.
Yeah.
They also tried different end shots for the film. There was one where the Volscians would gather to take pictures with their cell phones of the carcass, and then that image was relayed back into the home of Volumnia, who would probably be feeling very mournful about it.
That might actually be the most dickiest take that you can actually take of the material.
Why is that?
Well, that would make the Wolskis the most assholish characters in the play. Like, holy fuck. That there would be no compassion and no honoring the now dead Coriolanus.
Most definitely that would go against the ending dialogue of the play, I would say.
Yeah, I can't fully... once again, like I said, I haven't listened to the commentary track myself, but kind of coming off with your description of the alternate ending, I kind of can't understand what the fuck they were thinking.
Then again, Ovidius is kind of a dick because he's the backstabbing monster.
Yeah, that's also true.
The budget for the film was $7.7 million US, premiered at the 61st Berlin International Film Festival and opened the Belgrade International Film Festival. There was one review from Manola Dargis of the New York Times, something that I think was quite fitting, quote, Mr. Fiennes has made smart choices here, notably by surrounding himself with a strong secondary cast. Yep. Film was also nominated for Golden Berlin Bear at the Berlin International Film Festival, 61st one. And that's for Coriolanus. Favorite performance?
Kinda sorta has to be Ray Fiennes. Like, no contest. Bit unfair since as Coriolanus he gets to hawk most of the screen time, gets the best quotes, gets the best speeches, and all that. But, what can you do?
Well, one thing you can do is to give the mantle to Vanessa Redgrave, because she blew me away. Absolutely blew me away as well here. Granted, Ralph Fiennes is on fire here. No doubt about it. But if I have to name anything else than Vanessa Redgrave, oh my god. Whew, yeah. Shaken here totally by her performance. Favorite scene?
That would be the common cry of curse speech.
Yeah. Something that was one of the most memorable for me was definitely the sugar factory scene, but also when we first time get to the Volumnia flat and she's explaining her thinking of why she has sent her son to the war and to be the general. Favorite quote?
Mine goes to Brian Cox. This is kind of a heavy one because the whammer here builds up. So there's one line from Brutus in the mix, but basically Cox starts, "I know you can do very little alone. You talk of pride, or that you could turn your eyes toward the napes of your neck, and make but an interior survey of your good selves. All that you could." And Brutus remarks, "What then, sir?" And the counter is, "Why, then you should discover a praise of unmeriting, proud, violent, testy magistrates, alias fools, as any in Rome."
Definitely a great one. Of course, it could be too easy to go with the curse quote, which goes on forever from Ralph Fiennes in the TV studio. But if something else, then definitely this goes to Brian Cox once again. "There is no more mercy in him than there is milk in a male tiger." Also, I was happily surprised that Ralph Fiennes really adored this piece of dialogue, and he really wanted to leave it in.
Yeah, Shakespeare most definitely is someone who can dish out some really bad, pissing them off lines in his texts.
Yeah, this guy in the modern days would have owned all of us in a public conversation.
Most definitely.
Constant dish.
It would be really interesting to see what kind of a rapper Shakespeare would have made.
That's an image that you can't shake, dear listener.
Enjoy that one, you stuffy old priest.
Favorite kill?
It's Coriolanus at the end of the film. That's kind of the only kill that really holds some greater significance. Or the other violence throughout the film is kind of this casual. It's that soldier over there. It's that soldier over here. It's these two guys who gets taken out by the bus bomb.
Except that there is this family by the car, the three people that have been murdered, and this is where Ophidius goes into this long speech how much he hates Coriolanus and how he's going to avenge everything.
Yeah, and, I don't count collateral damage.
Well, that's also one question. Is it collateral damage, or is it Coriolanus just killing people randomly? Civilians, like they both do.
Actually, now that you ask, bit hard to say. There are those moments when Coriolanus is going through the apartment building, and he faces civilians, and he doesn't knowingly gun any of them down. He does shoot that one guy by accident when he blindly fires his pistol through the door, then kicks the door open, sees that the lady has lost her husband, and after that he's a bit more careful and he doesn't shoot any more civilians. So he doesn't, or at least it's not being shown to you that he knowingly, takes aim at civilian and just blasts away. But
I got the feeling that he is this type of a person who doesn't care
he could be that type of person.
Except the people who are serving him water. Yeah.
Yeah, he could be. It's kind of a hard. I can't say for certain, but he could be very well. It also could just be like a quick situation and Coriolanus gets has gotten a bit too trigger happy once again, gunning down the car. But yeah, now that you actually propose the questions, I don't know. Like maybe they are not collateral damage at all.
Yeah. For me, it would be also the favorite kill. God, it's kind of a sick category, but it would also for me be Coriolanus. But if I were to choose something else, my mind is gravitating towards this car. By the way, regarding the ending of the film, did you get like this feeling that, oh, so that was it? Were you disappointed by the ending? Of course you know the play, but do you feel that it would have needed a little bit more oomph? Because that's also the popular opinion I hear, that that's it, really? Like nothing else?
Kinda no.
Yeah.
Like it does end up like you hitting a brick wall. They just dump Coriolanus' body and it's black screen end credits. It's like snap and the film ends all of a sudden.
The play is though a tragedy, and it's a fitting end for a tragedy. Our main character is gone. What to do next? Well, yeah, that's it. It's also I kind of like it in its bluntness. This is war, and I don't know. It's fitting, kind of a crude ending for a crude situation.
Yeah, I also like it a lot because of the crudeness and the boldness it has. But at the same time, I can very well see people having problem with the way how the film ends. Like it's the way how the film ends. It is a bit problematic because it doesn't kind of reach. It doesn't reach a typical film ending. I kind of like it, but at the same time, the effect is that it just you just hit a wall and the film ends. That's that.
Yeah.
And I can very well understand and sympathize with anyone who actually feels a bit let down by the ending.
Random confusing question. Please don't tell me that you have been LARPing Coriolanus.
No, thanks. Heavens, no. I wouldn't touch that nerd shit with a 10-foot pole held by somebody else.
Of course not. Heaven forbid.
Heaven forbid. I only do like serious hobbies, like film podcasting.
That's the correct answer.
That's the correct answer.
First shot that comes to mind.
Is Coriolanus shouting at the people in the film studio during the common cry of curse speech?
Yeah.
Most definitely one of those close-ups when he's being angry as fuck. Like when he's shouting, "I banish you."
Oh my god, yes. And once again, I have to state that we haven't actually stated it. The fact that they have been able to make the ancient language, or kind of, I don't really think that the people at the time were talking exactly in this way. It's also a bit of like a written language, yes?
Yeah,
but
it is.
But I also sometimes feel a little bit unsure if this is the kind of language that the common people would have understood completely at their time, or if it's a little bit like highbrow language used here. Although it's been made the case that Shakespeare supposedly was some kind of a everyman's writer that everybody could understand and enjoy.
Yeah, hard to say, because you also kind of have to ask how much opportunities to go into theater every man had during those times in the 1600s. Was it simply a pastime for, well, not necessarily just for the elite, but for the elite and the well-off middle class?
Right, and in order to have a lot of vocabulary, you would still have to be able to read. So how many of those people that were not able to read are in the crowd? It's like the common people, I would imagine. Or I don't know how many people read at that time, but I think it's not that many.
Well, at least there was a lot of illiteracy during those times.
Right. And so my point being is that I have to raise my hat for the crew for being able to pull it off, this language, in such a natural way that you can buy that this is the words that they might use every day. They get pretty close to that.
They do. The illusion does break every now and then. Like there are a few moments where where you really kind of get really strong. Oh, this is a theater play. Put on the film vibes coming off from it.
But I think I got that feeling in a couple of places, even with Ray Fiennes'
I do
performance.
also. I do also. But seeing exactly how difficult the language is, how kind of a completely different the whole way of speaking is when compared to modern times, I still do raise my hat for the effect that they managed to pull off and the way how they were actually able to translate Shakespeare's text.
First shot that comes to my mind, it's basically when Coriolanus gets stabbed in the end. I don't know if this category should be retired because it doesn't work so well, because we go through the entire film and then we talk about LARPing and what's the first image that comes to your mind? Yeah. But what pulled you out?
Nothing really. I do have some minor problems with the film, like for the scissors of sacrilege section, really minor, but nothing that actually took me out of the picture.
No, this was quite of a mesmerizing experience, something that really keeps you pulled in. And when it comes to that, what pulled me in? A lot of things. Redgrave's delivery of some lines, once again, captivating as can be.
Yeah, to me, the first thing that pulled me in was the aggressive cinematic language and style that the film has. Like there are moments where the cinematography and the movie itself really has this oomph. Like for example, when the citizens are revolting and they get attacked by the police. And there are those handheld camera shots as the police are dragging the people on the concrete and banging up on them, hitting them with batons, and circling one person, just kicking him as he's on the ground, or the urban firefight scenes, or some of the scenes as they are driving around in their cars and arriving into a set location. There's just that kind of there's the handheld camera plus the background music plus the kind of aggressive nature that every movement has on those scenes. And that's that's the first thing that always clues me in.
Yeah, the fact that he had so many seasoned professionals in his team, like Barry Ackroyd as the DP, it really helped the movie to be as good as it is. Barry Ackroyd also did the DP stuff for The Hurt Locker, by the way.
Yep, he did.
Scissors of Sacrilege. Now, what's happening here, Henrik?
From my end, maybe some small fixes to cutting so that it wouldn't be so kind of also like snap and cut type of editing. Maybe smooth that around in couple of scenes. Also, maybe a few, just a bit more smoother dialogue deliveries here and there, so that you wouldn't get that theater play as a film feeling.
For me, it's a little bit trickier to say. If I would change something, I would definitely try to do something about the fact that you have this, concussion scene with Coriolanus and Ophidius, and then the next shot, as I said, is when Ophidius is approaching the car with the three bodies. That was clearly forced cutting. They didn't have material probably to insert here because they really had a tight schedule and really had to fight to get the film shot in the amount of time that they had. Also, I heard that this film did go through a lot of cutting. There was a lot of footage of the extra dialogue shot, but it was trimmed immensely in the edit. But no, I can't really say much else than that. You really know you're watching Coriolanus when
the common folk pollute your air, the bastards.
You really know you're watching Coriolanus when you think you have had a brain stroke when you start hearing the dialogue.
You should also check out Ian McKellen's Richard III, which also is a really great Shakespeare filmatization.
Okay.
Also does this more modernized take. It switches the film, the story into, was it 1930s? And kind of has also some scenes that really has extremely strong Nazi Hitler vibes in it. But altogether, it's kind of like a gangster jazz take on Shakespearean play. It's a really great stuff.
And what's your really great stuff for tonight's 3 adjectives of the film?
Mine would be truthful, heartfelt, and a bit painful.
Tyrannical, powerful, milkless.
Milkless?
Well, you know, the...
What? I'm not, trying to counter-argue or anything else. I'm merely interested, where did the milk come from?
It came from the Brian Cox quote that there is no milk in the male tiger.
Oh, yeah. Good one. Good one.
Did you look at your watch during this film?
I did not. I kind of didn't even have a possibility to check my watch because their dialogue actually is so goddamn complex that if you start checking your watch, you miss the dialogue and then you drop out of the film.
Actually, I'm quite curious what happens in the Finnish subtitles of this film. I guess you checked this Finnish subtitles, so I suppose it's from the Finnish translation, pretty direct. The Finnish translation of the play directly or something like this.
I'm not sure then if it's directly from Finnish translation. There are a couple of translations of the play. I actually have them here with me. So there is the collected plays of William Shakespeare version, which is from 1958, which is kind of really hard to read, even as a Finn. Not so that the language itself is that difficult, but it tries to keep up very much with Shakespeare's writing style using 50s Finnish language, and it kinda is maybe a bit messy at times. Then there is the more recent translation from 2008, which also stays true to the Shakespearean text, but it does kind of it does make it a bit more simplistic, like the outlook of the language. It makes the story and the text a bit more easier to read.
Not studying slang, at least, though.
No, nothing like that. But the 2008 is very clear Finnish. And when it comes to the translation of the film, I'm guessing that they actually did their own translation for the movie. Like it's even more.
And was it understandable in Finnish for you, or more understandable?
I would say it was even more understandable than the 2008 book translation of the play. They may have like the 2008 is from Lauri Sipari, and it might be that for the film the translator has taken notes from Sipari and has taken the overall direction of how to translate from Sipari, but it's where Sipari still is kind of he's translating a play. In the film version they are more or less kind of translating a typical film text that now has Shakespearean kind of a quality to it. It's really kind of hard to explain like how the different translations different from each other.
I can definitely see some general Sandrew metronome Finnish translator joking into their Cheerios when they would have been assigned to translate this film.
Yeah, I can't believe that this has been a nightmare for the poor translator, especially since you also know that when you are translating it, you already know that this is just going to be direct to DVD feature, so your translation is not getting a theatrical release and screening, and even with that DVD you kind of know that it's going to be a kind of a niche product. Like it's not one of those DVDs that everybody in Finland will buy.
But yeah, Also, I didn't watch my watch, but then the only question that stands for tonight, I believe, is Henrik, would you recommend Coriolanus?
No, because it's Shakespeare, and Shakespeare was poetry, and poetry is kind of gay.
True that. Everybody who has heard any poetry from Shakespeare in high school is probably feeling a little bit icky about everything Shakespeare, because they truly make the best effort to make everyone hate Shakespeare there.
They do. The cruel bastard. I can't understand why they do it.
Yeah.
But honestly, obviously, I would recommend Coriolanus, just like I recommended for this list. We have, and in this episode also, we have remarked that there's this sentiment of seeing the world through the eyes of a soldier. And that's something that is often talked about in Finland also. And even though...
Okay. You wanted to talk about their army experiences for the next half an hour as well.
Well, I still have free disk space, so, here it comes. But honestly, even though military life in Finland is very different, for example, military life in US, since we don't see active combat that much, but that still, in my opinion, doesn't change the fact that you may still, even in Finland, if you go through army, you can still end up with the same disconnect from the society. God knows I ended up with that. I'm still kind of dealing with it even today, because I guess I got a bit too deep into the military programming. But there is the problem that the Finnish society, like every civilized society, it abhors violence, it abhors killing, it doesn't accept those. If you do those,
some random generals in the army, who are advocating for it.
Yeah, and that's kind of precisely the problem. Like your civilized society, you are supposed to disown killing and stay away from it. But what you are in the army, you are highly trained killer. So how do you exist in society after you leave the barracks and you try to once again become part of the world where you are supposed to be soft and emotional? And at the same time, you kind of face the problem that you can't really ever talk about that disconnect. Partly because it's hard to put to words, partly because it's kind of even shameful for yourself to start talking about how you are a killer, possibly, and try to explain that. And partly because most definitely your significant other won't wanna hear a word of it. Like, when the dude starts talking about the military experience, it's the immediate eye-rolling commences. And
this is the clear disconnect. If you don't know what it is to be in an army, you don't share those experiences, and I can perfectly understand why. For example, because most women don't go to army, they don't see the same values in these movies as we do.
Yeah, and they don't necessarily see the same kind of a bad shit that you can see when you serve in the army. Like, there's a lot of problematic elements. There are a lot of elements that can affect you very personal and deep level. And that's just something that you then are supposed to carry with you, deal with, while keeping your goddamn mouth shut. Like, the Finnish guys being unable to talk about anything else except their army experiences and ice hockey, it's a common joke in Finland, but it also holds some truth in it, because it's really hard to actually ever convey those experiences to anyone except, another dude in a bar after a few beers, when you can finally open up about those things. But
this applies for everything in every situation. If you don't know something about something, you don't know the rules of the ice hockey, then you probably don't care about ice hockey. If you don't make the effort to read Shakespeare, then you probably don't find anything here in Coriolanus.
But Coriolanus, most of all, Coriolanus is about that disconnect. And it's about why you should still try to deal with that disconnect. And it's an attempt to put that disconnect into word. So on that regard, if you for some reason feel that you are expected to take part in a society that you can't completely understand or comprehend, you feel that you are supposed to be part of something that you kind of can't find a way how to be part of. In that case, I kind of would recommend Coriolanus to you, because like maybe you see it and you watch it and you think it's just a bullshit film with way too fancy for itself language, yada yada yada. But at the same time, it does talk about that same topic. So maybe through Coriolanus, you yourself can find a way to put into words those things that are too complex to be put into words, so to say. So yeah, most definitely, check out Coriolanus. High recommendations.
Are we unintentionally supporting fascism in this podcast?
I'm not supporting fascism. God damn it.
Yeah, but I just realized that I have been more supportive of the viewpoint of Coriolanus here than the common people, so... But no.
Yeah, you're fucking Nazi.
Oh dear.
This is partly my fault. I should never have shown you Birth of a Nation.
Yeah, bastard.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah. But I, on my part, also would recommend highly Coriolanus. I was really surprised to see the score on IMDb, which is of course extremely valuable information, as 6.1 out of 10, I believe, at this moment.
Something like that. It's not really that highly remarked film.
Right, and I think it all boils down to the very not so accessible language. But if you're willing to go through that, I think you're gonna have a hell of a ride. So please watch Coriolanus. I think it's starting to look like that I'm going to go watch a Polish film called Bad Boy in about 40 minutes to the theaters. So I think I'm ready to sign off.
So I guess in that case I have to let you off to run to the movie theaters.
Right.
And just when I was actually going to start my 2-hour rant about the military experiences.
Yeah, such of a bad boy you are.
Are you really sacrificing, listening to me ramble about army for a Polish film?
I most definitely am. I'm the treacherous bastard who left his home country to watch Polish films.
This is the dude I have to work with.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. Hey, let's not keep you waiting any more longer. You are going to be in a hurry in any minute now. So thank you for joining us.
Also, it's the fact that the advertisements go on for like 25 minutes, so it'll be relatively okay still. But hey, thanks for joining us. And in the meanwhile, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram,
and other places where the common curse conclude.
See you next week, curse.
Until then. And let the pitch burn.
I've got a funny feeling there's something wrong today. I've got a funny feeling and it won't go away.